Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful, creepy little human being. You, welcome to my channel and welcome to today's Morbid makeup video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this craziness today, you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or BRATTERSTEIN, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the brutal, horrifying, and absolutely pointless ambush and murder of 32-year-old Brandon Duran. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new Morbid makeup video every single week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you. And so would Bow. So go ahead and do that. Join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us. One of us. One of us. And of course, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter if you want. They're both BRATTERSTEIN, but there's no pressure. Okay, so now that we're done with the self-promotion, this case, and this is going to be a gnarly one. This is an incredibly intense case that I'm surprised that more people haven't discussed on YouTube because the crime was brutal, the story is horrible, and incredibly upsetting. Now, this video is also going to be a bit more on the personal side because I had the incredibly unique and valuable experience of speaking to one of Brandon's family members before finishing my notes on this case. I got to speak to Brandon's younger brother, Garrett, and I found that to be incredibly insightful in seeing who Brandon was as a person, as a brother, as a father, as a friend, and not just as a victim. Because as you know, if you've seen any of my videos, I prefer to highlight the person's life and the life they lived and who they were, and not just how their life tragically ended. So I'm incredibly thankful to Garrett for giving me that opportunity to kind of know his brother in a way that otherwise I would not have because I never met him, obviously. Jesus Christ. I'm just thankful for the insight and the opportunity, and I don't know for sure if Garrett's gonna watch this, but if he does, thank you again, Garrett, for helping me know your brother a little bit better and being able to tell other people about your brother in a more thorough way. With all that said, I should probably get into telling you guys the details. So come, gather around and let me tell you the story of the completely senseless and horrible murder of Brandon Duran. Brandon Duran was born June 24th, 1980, making him a Cancer. He was born to parents Cindy and Marc, and Brandon was given the middle name Marc after his father. Cindy and Marc were married at the time that they had Brandon, but separated shortly thereafter in 1983 and agreed to share joint custody of Brandon so he could have both of his parents in his life. So he spent time going back and forth between New Mexico, where he spent most of his life with his father, and San Diego to be with his mom, his new stepdad, and his little brother Garrett, who was 5 years younger than him, being born on May 15th, 1985, making him a Taurus. Brandon was a silly kid, but a laid-back kid. He was the type who didn't really need to be the center of attention, whereas his little brother Garrett was more goofy and typically was the one everybody had eyes on. But as Brandon got older and became a teenager, he became more of a wild child. He was a little bit fearless, and Garrett really looked up to and admired Brandon. Brandon was 5 years older and was seen as like the cool brother, the rugged brother, the punk. And Garrett wanted to be just like his big brother. And even though they didn't get to spend as much time together as kids as they would have liked, with the parents having joint custody and Brandon going back and forth, the two were incredibly close throughout their lives, and that lasted into adulthood. Though the distance was a bit of a setback with Brandon spending so much time in New Mexico, it didn't really affect their closeness. Family was everything, blood was everything, and when they were together, they would take advantage of all the time they had together. They'd go to shows together, they'd experience music together, and they were just friends in addition to being brothers, which is an awesome thing to have with your siblings. Garrett describes his brother as a natural leader. He described him as a combination of Adam Sandler, John Bender from The Breakfast Club, which, side note, I can totally see that. Even physically, he resembles him to me. I can see it physically. But anyways. He also said that he was very similar to Billy the Kid in Young Guns and Nicolas Cage in the way that he was animated, especially in the movie Valley Girl, and Glenn Danzig. He said if there was ever a movie to be made about his brother, he'd have to be played by Charlie Hunnam, that he was similar to his character in Sons of Anarchy, but with a better fashion sense. Brandon was very into music. He would just sit in his car and blast music with his friends and just really let loose. And Garrett credits Brandon for his good taste in music. The two are really into punk, big fans of the Misfits. They're definitely part of the Fiend Club, for sure. Brandon was also very talented. He was a very good snowboarder, which, like, props to him because that sounds horrifying and it's something that I don't think I could ever do. And he was so good at it that this actually prompted one of the first pivotal moments in his life. And in 1998, when he was 18 years old, he moved to San Diego full-time where his mother was and was chasing his dream to be a professional snowboarder. Apparently he was really, really good, and he was even sponsored by like brands. Like, he was a good snowboarder. Which, how awesome must it be to be good at something and also love doing it, right? Like, that's not always the thing. That's not always the case. In addition to loving snowboarding, he was also pretty good and pretty interested in metalworking. Apparently this was something that his father did, and because him and his father were like very close, they spent a lot of one-on-one time growing up, just the two of them. They were incredibly close, and he wanted to follow in the footsteps of his father, so he got very interested and very good at metalworking around the age of 21. In addition to following his father's footsteps in the metalworking, he also was very into motorcycles. His father was. So later in life, Brandon also became very into motorcycles. And when they were growing up, when he was growing up, his dad was already grown up, clearly, Jesus Christ, he would teach him how to build motorcycles. So this was like a big part of his life as well. Speaking of his father, Marc, apparently another big pivotal moment in Brandon's life was when in 2005, his dad sadly died of blood disease. Apparently he just went in for a liver biopsy, and he never got better. They immediately found something wrong, and it all happened very quickly, and this was devastating for Brandon. As I said, they were very close, which is such an obvious statement that you would be devastated by a parent's death, but they were particularly close, so this crushed him, and he went into a pretty bad depression. He stopped snowboarding, he stopped doing other things he loved, and he seemed to sort of lose a piece of himself when his father died. After his father died, as I had said, he was into metalworking. He actually made an urn for his father's ashes, which was, I think that that's such a sweet thing, such a personalized thing for him to do. And that's what he kept his father's ashes in his home. And he also took to wearing this pin on the collar of his jacket that was a guardian angel that his father had made him out of metal on. It looked like a vest, like a denim vest, and he would wear it all the time. And on the bottom of the vest, like around the bottom, there was a bunch of little pins, and of course he had to have a Misfits pin on there as well. And I think that's, I don't know, I feel like I can relate to him as a person in a lot of ways. I have that denim vest with all those pins. I don't know, guys. This one just bums me out a lot, so that's that on that. After grieving for a while, Brandon decided that California wasn't for him anymore, and he actually moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. This is where a lot of his father's friends lived, a lot of his like biker friends. They were in a group called the Banditos, and he went down there to become close with people who were the closest with his father, and in turn, he felt closeness with his father. Being around the people who knew him best and loved him most helped him feel like he was in turn closer with his father, if that makes sense, which I think it does. I think I explained that as correctly as I could. Anyways, while there, he got a job in construction, but all of his free time was spent hanging out with his new friends, really into that whole biker life. So while hanging out at a biker rally, which is like, I guess, a place where a lot of people who ride motorcycles hang out together. Yes, if you know biker life, please God tell me, because I don't. My grandmother would be so disappointed because she was like very, very, very much a biker chick, but I'm a vanilla little LA bitch. I don't know what to tell you. Anyways, while at one of these rallies, Brandon met the woman that would one day be his wife, a 23-year-old girl named Amber Andrews. Brandon was crazy about her. She had the whole pinup girl look to her with black hair and blue eyes and blah, blah, blah. She was mysterious and uninhibited, and she was the type of girl whose role model was Baby from House of a Thousand Corpses, which, like, good movie, but maybe not the best role model. She was all the things he wanted, and he became just all about her, even saying that he believed that his father had brought her into his life, which just makes me sick, honestly, and sad. That's a little bit, it hits me in the heart. But Brandon was just a hopeless romantic. He didn't want to date. He wanted to date to find a life partner and to be in love. Things moved quickly with Brandon and Amber, and within no time she was meeting the family. And when they met her, they liked her fine. They thought maybe she seemed a little bit damaged, but Brandon had explained that she had had a really rocky childhood. And it's actually so effing sad because Brandon's mother in an interview said that she felt sad for Amber and her childhood, and she felt like she could help Amber by loving her unconditionally. By April of 2006, the couple, both being 24 years old, found out that Amber was pregnant. And at this time, they had been together less than a year, but Brandon was so stoked. He loved his dad, so he loved the idea of being a dad and wanted to be exactly the kind of father that his father was. So almost immediately, the two decided they were going to make it official, and they set their wedding date for June 6th, 2006. 666. This date was chosen by Amber. She said that it was always her life goal to get married on 666, which, like, I know some people are going to be like, demon, right? Which, yeah, she was, but that's just honestly a little bit metal that they chose to do that, and that Brandon was like, hell yeah. Though Brandon was having cold feet about the marriage to Amber, he was just like a stand-up guy, and he wanted to do what was best for his future child. He wanted to make sure that they had a whole family. So the wedding day was actually a really happy day. Brandon invited his friends from California to come down to Las Vegas to watch the two get married. They got married at the Little White Wedding Chapel in Vegas, which is, I've actually been there. Two of my friends got married there. But anyways, Brandon and his friends and his family were standing in the parking lot having a couple beers before the wedding started, and then a white limo pulled up and Amber climbed out in a black wedding dress that she had made herself. Now, during the ceremony, as Amber gave her vows, talking about how she would love and cherish Brandon always, Garrett, who was Brandon's best man, which is very sweet, and his mother Cindy both said that Amber looked like a black widow. 6 months after the wedding, on December 15th, 2006, the couple, surrounded by family, welcomed their little baby boy into the world. A boy that they named Brando Marcos Duran, which is very, very sweet, just like Brandon Marc Duran. When Amber gave birth, she was wearing bright red lipstick. I don't know why I felt that was noteworthy, but I thought I'd let you know that she was wearing bright red lipstick. So after Brando was born, things were tough for the couple. Nothing can really prepare you for being a parent. Like, you can think you're all ready, you can think you know what it's about, but once you have a kid, it's different. I don't have any kids, but I've seen it. It's hard work, okay? And though the family had their sweet moments, they definitely did, like on Christmas, on Brando's first Christmas, because he was born in December, they like decorated cookies for Santa, or excuse me, put out cookies for Santa? They left cookies out for Santa. I don't know if they decorated them, but it was something that Brandon did with his family growing up when he was a kid, so they definitely had their sweet moments and traditions that they wanted to have with their son, but they were finding it to be very hard, very stressful, because it is, and Amber seemed to have a particular sense of difficulty adjusting to the selflessness you need to have in order to be a mother. More so than Brandon did at being a father. The couple decided that Amber would stop working as much and she would be a stay-at-home mom to Brando, which meant that Brandon had to really step it up, work more, work harder in order to make sure his family had, you know, a roof over their head and food in their bellies. This is when the relationship started to get particularly difficult, and Amber started to feel, she was a party girl, okay? This was a party girl by nature. You'll see photos of her. You can just tell by looking at her. I can tell the type of person she is by looking at her. And she was a party girl. So the isolation and the sense of isolation, the just being alone in general, motherhood is lonely. I'm not gonna lie about that, but she was having a lot of trouble with it. So as soon as she was done breastfeeding and she was able to start going out and drinking again, she took full advantage. Which, don't get me wrong, it's fine to be a parent and go out and do stuff, but she's an asshole, so I don't really care if I badmouth her a little bit, in my opinion. And probably in yours too by the end of this. Certainly fucking hope so. So she started going out more whenever she could get a babysitter or whenever Brandon was home. The two would obviously go out together because, like, Brandon was a bit of a rebel too. He liked to party and he liked to drink, but he was also a responsible adult man who knew when it was appropriate and when you needed to, like, man up and be an adult. So a lot of the times she would just go out by herself. And while Amber went out, she wasn't only drinking, because on at least one occasion, a family member of Brandon's had seen her while being out doing some sort of drug. They weren't sure exactly what she was doing, but they know that afterwards her energy and her personality changed a lot. She was meaner and very hyper aware of everything going on. So if you have any guesses based on your knowledge of drugs, please leave them down below, because I don't know, but it's all speculation because we don't know either. But so she was partying a bit of partying. So for a time, Brandon's then sister-in-law, Garrett's now ex-wife, started staying around the house. One, because she was new in town. She was new in town. She had just moved to the Vegas area and she didn't have a job, so this way she could make some extra money helping a stressed out and overwhelmed Amber. And two, baby Brando was close with her. He knew her and he wanted to make sure if somebody was there helping, it was somebody that his son would feel comfortable with. So while she was staying there, she would see Amber leave to go do errands, but she was like real done up, where it looked like she wasn't going to be going to do errands. You know what I'm saying? Garrett noticed this as well because at a time he too was living at the house helping the couple take care of baby Brando. So clearly, Brandon didn't fucking like this, right? He didn't like the idea of his wife like getting all dolled up and going out all the time, going out without him. And when she would come home and he'd ask her like, where have you been? She would refuse to tell him and she'd get super, super pissed off that he would ask. So the two fought about this semi-often. One of these fights started because Amber, okay, hear this out. Amber had come home from being out doing her errands. And when she came home, she was wearing different clothes than when she left. And her hair was wet, like she had taken a shower somewhere. Okay, so Brandon got a little pissed off, like, where were you? What the fuck? And, you know, a big fight broke out. And during this fight, okay, first off, the cops had to be called because it got very loud. And during this fight, this girl, when you hear this, okay, you know the urn that Brandon had made to hold his father's ashes, his father that was so wildly important to him? Well, this woman grabbed the urn, went outside, and threw it on the ground in the yard. And to that I say, what a bitch. Am I right? I'm sorry if you were listening in headphones and I just screamed bitch in your ear, but are you kidding me? I would have picked her up and thrown her fucking ass outside. Not really, don't do that, but also, throw her outside. Anyways, it didn't break, but like, what an asshole, am I right? So the cops, as I said, came, and after talking to everybody who was there, they determined that she needed to leave. She needed to get her things and leave, so she did. She packed her stuff, and she left that night. Which just shows you who the aggressor was, in my opinion. About a week later, Amber came home, and despite all the craziness, he forgave her. He always forgave her because one, he wanted the best life for his son. He wanted his child to have the stable family life that he didn't feel like he had. And in addition to that, he did love her. Like, for all of her absolutely toxic traits, he loved her. She was like a drug to him. Not long after she came back, things got bad again. It seems like she was the type who would come back, she'd make all of these promises, she'd be better for a short amount of time, and then she'd go right back into her own ways. I feel like we all know this type of person, somebody who's just gonna tell you exactly what you wanna hear in order to keep you in their lives. But things were not good for the couple, and his family started to notice that he had marks and bruises on him, and he would never admit that they were from her, maybe to protect her, so his family didn't hate her, maybe to protect his ego, but his family does believe that it was from her. And they also learned after he was already gone that at one point she had even had him jumped because she is the worst. Brandon did eventually get to a breaking point with Amber though, and after years of struggling together in 2010, the couple filed for divorce, and they had agreed on joint custody of Brando, so they would each get him for 1 week. 1 week on, 1 week off. Of course, Brandon wanted full custody. Who wouldn't? He wanted to be with his son always, but he also recognized that his son needed a mother, and he wanted his son to have his mother. So he was okay with this arrangement to a point. He would make the absolute most out of the time that they had together. Their weeks were filled with fun and love, and he was doing this not out of obligation, like I have to because I'm your father, but because he loved his child. That's one thing that's undisputable. He loved his son. But Amber, okay, buckle in. If you did not already hate her Let me just tell you something that this woman did. One day, Brandon and his mother drove on over to Amber's Las Vegas home to pick up Brando for one of his designated visits. So they go to the door and they knock and they get no answer. They wait a while, they're calling to her, no answer. So Brandon, who still has a key, lets himself in. And what does he find? Nothing, because this woman had straight up taken their child and moved to Oklahoma without telling him. She was just like, deuces, and flew or drove, or she left. She just left with their kid. So at this point, Brandon and his sister-in-law at the time, Garrett's ex-wife, jump in a car and make the 24-hour drive to Oklahoma to find his son. They had heard that Amber was living with a boyfriend in Oklahoma named Justin, so they drove straight to this guy's house. So once they get there, they call Oklahoma police to assist them in going to retrieve Brando. And when they got to the house and police got to the house, even though Amber's car was in the driveway, nobody would answer the door. So police were like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, nobody's answering the door. So the police leave. Brandon and his sister-in-law sat in the car outside the house all day waiting for her to come out, waiting for her to come back, waiting to see somebody. But after 8 or 9 hours, they still had seen nobody. So they're like, you know what, let's quickly grab something to eat. We'll come right back. Like, they were starving, they were tired, they'd been there all day. So they leave. And by the time they get back from just grabbing food, the car was gone. So Brandon was upset, as I'm sure you can imagine, and he contacted his attorney. And his attorney was like, okay, what you need to do is come back home and make a missing persons report, file a missing persons report on your son. So he did just that. They went back and he filed the report. And literally after the report was filed, within like, I believe it was 24 hours, she had already contacted Brandon and had said that she would bring Brando back. Because of this, Brandon ended up being awarded full custody of Brando, not only because of the actual bullshit that Amber had pulled by kidnapping him and taking him across state lines. Brandon also had his life together. He had a stable home, he had a stable job, he was a stable father, and they were like, well, obviously we're going to give this person who's got their life together, this child. And the judge actually deemed Amber an unfit mother and gave her no visitation. In 2011, Brandon and Brando moved back to San Diego, where his family lived, to start fresh and just get their lives on track. He was raising his son in his family's faith, teaching him about snowboarding and motorcycles and music, and things were really good for a while. He and Brando were alone for a full year, and they hadn't really heard from Amber at all until 2012. In 2012, Amber reached out to Brandon. She said that she loved him, that she wanted to try to make it work, that she hoped that she hadn't done too much to already ruin their entire family, and that she wanted to give them a chance and for him to forgive her. And just manipulating him into getting back with her and giving their family a shot. And sadly, he did. He wanted his son to have a full, strong, unbroken family. He wanted his son to have his mother. And he, despite the type of person she was, he loved Amber. He had dated other people since they had broken up, but none of them were her. None of them made him feel how she did. And that's the that on that. So that summer in 2012, Amber came back to reunite with Brandon and Brando. And as I'm sure you can imagine, Brandon's family wasn't stoked about it. I can't imagine how his mom felt, especially since she was with him when he went to that house and found that she had taken Brando without telling him. But, you know, Brandon was an adult, and that's the relationship he wanted to be in, and his family just had to accept that. I didn't get the impression that Brandon was the type of guy who would have been like, he wasn't a pushover, you know? You're not going to say, like, you shouldn't be with her, and he's going to be like, oh, okay, I shouldn't be with her. He's going to be like, well, guess what? I'm going to do what I want because I'm a grown man. Like, that's the impression I got from him. And to Brandon, things seemed good. The couple had a plan. They were going to go back to Oklahoma together so that they could start to rebuild a little bit. They were going to let Brando see her family, pick up her stuff, and then they were all going to come back to California. Like, that was the plan. So they loaded up his truck. They loaded up his motorcycle, and they headed off together with the plan to return home in just a couple of weeks. But sadly, Brandon would never get to come home. On August 8th, 2012, a police officer in rural southern Oklahoma received a call from a man named Van Emblem, who said that the night before, he had taken part in helping a friend dispose of a body. So police met with him and they gave him immunity in exchange for spilling the beans. And this is what he says happened. Van said that the night before, on August 7th, 2012, he received a call from a friend of his, somebody that he says that was his best friend, more like a brother, a man named Justin. And Justin was like, hey, I need you to come over and help me dispose of a body, just real casual. And he's like, yeah, sure, yeah, be right there, no big deal. I don't think that's actually how it went down, but that's what I imagine. So he heads over and he says he thought it was a whole joke until he got there and he saw that there were buckets and blood everywhere. And he was like, oh, like this is a real thing. So he says that he was scared of what would happen to him if he was to say no. And so he helped Justin load these bloody buckets into a vehicle, and then he dipped and immediately contacted his attorney, who was like, you need to call the police. And this is going to be a direct quote from Van Emblem about that night, and just know that it is a little bit graphic and lets you know a little bit about what happened, in case you want to skip it. Just knowing from him telling me moments before I saw the buckets that he had shot him, cut him up, and put him into buckets, I mean, I couldn't imagine what it took to do that. It freaked me out. Scariest moment of my life. So as I'm sure you can imagine, police wanted to talk to this Justin guy, right? So they kind of stake out his house and wait for him to leave before arresting him. And after a little bit of time, they saw him leave. So as he drove away, they pulled him over and then they took him to the station to discuss the claims that Van had made. And he pretty much crumbled immediately. He was like, okay, you got me. Yes, I did kill a man, but he was an intruder. He broke into my house. So in self-defense, I shot him. And then I disposed of his body in the pond behind my house because I freaked out and I didn't know what to do. And they were like, okay, thanks for the information. That's still hella illegal, even if he was an intruder, by the way, which, spoiler alert, he wasn't. So police go to his property because they want to search this pond. So in order to do so, they actually drain the pond, which makes me wonder, like, how fucking big was this pond that you could just drain it? But either way, they drained the pond, and this is when they found some really messed up stuff. And this, again, will be a bit graphic. When they drained the pond, the first thing they saw was a dog cage. And inside the dog cage was only a human torso. Okay? As they kept looking, they found 5 buckets, plastic buckets, and inside these buckets were body parts encased in concrete. The body had been cut into 25 pieces, and this body was Brandon Duran. Police called Brandon's family back home in California to tell them, 1, what had happened, and 2, so that they could confirm and identify his body. And it's so, oh my God, it's so sad. His body had to be identified by his tattoos. And that statement just gives me all types of, because, I mean, if you don't know, I mentioned this in my Q&A, but 2 of my friends were murdered many years ago, and one of my friends had to be identified by his tattoos. So something that is just like an eerie feeling. Brandon's family, as I'm sure you can guess, was devastated by this information. His mother had initially taken the call and she couldn't finish the phone call. She had to put the phone down. The pain of losing a child must be just completely unimaginable. And getting that call, my brain cannot compute that. It's gotta just be like a punch in the gut, because like I have lost people to violence, right? But never somebody like that, you know, never a son, never a brother, never somebody just that close to my heart. And I cannot imagine what that feels like. And after his mother, after Cindy learned what had happened, she just clung to Garrett, the only son that she had left. Okay. After this, police want to talk to Amber, as I'm sure you can imagine, right? Like, what happened? So they contact her to find out what happened. This is what she says happened on August 7th, 2012. She says that the 2 of them were driving together to a doctor's appointment. They're just driving around when she casually mentions a boyfriend's name to Brandon. And can you guess what this boyfriend's name was? Justin Hammer. Same Justin who Van called the police on and said had killed an intruder. Okay? Same guy. She then said that Brandon got very upset at this conversation, that he stopped the truck. He got out, he took the motorcycle out of the bed of the truck, and he took off, leaving her alone. And that was the last time that she ever saw him. So they compared this to what Justin said. Now, what Justin said happened is that he was just hanging out at home, chilling, not killing. When all of a sudden, Brandon got to his house and kicked in his door and came in and was like, yo, stay away from Amber. She's mine. We're back together. Like, real threatening, like, okay? And he said that he was just terrified. He thought that Brandon was gonna hurt him. He thought that Brandon was part of a biker gang, blah, blah, blah. So he grabs a shotgun and a handgun off of his gun safe and simultaneously shoots Brandon in the head with both guns. Both of these guns, by the way, were later found in his gun safe with Brandon's blood still on them. He said that Brandon then went down, clearly dead, and then at that point he panicked, so that's why he chose to dispose of the body the way that he did. Cutting him up for a self-defense murder. Sounds so fucking reasonable, I can't take it. So even though, you know, Justin Hammer claimed that it was self-defense, police were like, nah, that's definitely bullshit. And on August 9th, 2012, he was arrested and officially charged with the first-degree murder of Brandon Duran. The trial started about 2 years later in July of 2014, and Justin continued to claim that it was self-defense. It was clear to the prosecution that this was not self-defense because when searching Justin's home, police found some very interesting things. In addition to having this gun safe in his house that was just filled with guns and ammo, which is like, fine, if that's your thing, go off, have your guns in your gun safe. But they also found a very interesting list hidden in this gun safe. This was a weird handwritten list with items like a saw, a meat grinder, gas cans, 5-gallon buckets, tarps, bleach, carpet cleaner, ammonia, changes of clothes. So this was basically a murder list. What you would need to murder someone. Okay? Also, police found CCTV footage of Justin the day before the murder at Ace Hardware store buying items on that murder list. And fun fact, the manager at the hardware store actually testified that Justin had been there 2 days in a row buying items for the murder off this murder list. And he testified at Justin's trial about those facts. That's the sentence. Very good English. Mouthful of spit. Tight. In addition to the Ace Hardware guy ratting him out, he also had some of his own friends testify against him at trial, stating that Justin had actually talked about a potential murder he may commit, okay, with his friends, even stating that he would try to get away with it for self-defense. Justin, come on, man. For the record, Justin has always claimed that he acted alone in this murder. On October 6th, 2012, Justin Hammer was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sounds like the end of the story, right? Not quite. I know that a lot of you were like, wait a minute, but what about Amber? Because that bitch sounds guilty as hell. Well, let me tell you about Amber. So, once Justin was convicted, the police started narrowing in on Amber because there were some facts about his case that made them believe there were 2 people involved. Let me explain. When they had done an autopsy on Brandon's body, it was discovered that, trigger warning, he had been shot in the face with a shotgun, which did support their narrative, support their story. But they also determined that Brandon had been shot 3 times in the back of the head with a handgun. Okay? 2 guns, 2 murderers. Or maybe it was, 1 man with 6 guns. There was a firefight. No, I gotta go. So police were already feeling like it was Amber, and if the 2 guns thing wasn't enough, which it already was, the murder list, the list that was found in Justin Hammer's possession with all that stuff on it, well, it looked as if it was written by a woman based on the handwriting. So all this time she had been free, which must have just been so frustrating, because I saw in interviews with Cindy, Brandon's mother, that she just knew that Amber was involved. But, oh, and side note, so while this woman was free, she ended up having another baby. So she had claimed that this baby belonged to Justin Hammer, but it was thought for a time that maybe it could have been Brandon's baby because of their reconciliation. But it turns out this baby belonged to another man entirely. So it just appears that this woman just had all kinds of men just under her thumb. So police are looking into Amber's alibi, and they start with talking to a woman named Erin. Now, Erin was a woman, obviously, and she was the person who was babysitting Brando when Amber and Brandon left together to go to that doctor's appointment the last time he was seen alive. Now, she told police that Amber and Brandon left together with the truck and the motorcycle tied down in the bed of the truck, which all fits with Amber's story. She then said that Amber showed back up without Brandon and very upset. And when she asked Amber what had happened to Brandon, she told her the same story, that he had left her on his motorcycle into the wilderness, whatever, headed to Justin Hammer's house. And this was very interesting to police because they had looked into it, and it turns out there's no way that this story could be true, because at the time that this happened, Brandon's bike did not run. It was inoperable. In addition to this, Erin told police that the day that she left with Brandon, somehow Amber managed to take Erin's cell phone with her instead of her own cell phone. So she took Erin's and she left her cell phone at Erin's house, which could just be a super random fact. Or it could prove premeditation, because if Amber knew that police were going to want to trace her cell phone, and if they didn't know that she had, left her cell phone and had taken somebody else's cell phone, they would get her records and it would show nothing incriminating, okay? So maybe it was random. Maybe she thought of that. I kind of think she thought of that. Amber probably thought that police would never know this, but Erin, this little angel, had the presence of mind to tell police this fact. So police, instead of going after Amber's freaking cell phone records, got Erin's cell phone records. And in looking into them, they found out some very interesting information. Police found that just before 5 p.m., Erin's phone, the phone that Amber had on her, pinged to a tower right by Justin Hammer's house. Immediately after that, the phone was turned off and wasn't turned back on until 9 p.m. It is during those 4 hours that police believe that Brandon was murdered and dismembered. It turns out that this murder was incredibly planned, okay? Amber and Justin Hammer, at the time of the murder, were still in a relationship with each other. This was not her ex. So her contacting Brandon, saying she wanted to make it work and get their family back together, was all part of the plan. So this asshole lured him to Oklahoma so that she could ambush him with her new boyfriend and murder him far away from his home. And that's just so up, right? Like, it's such a heartless plan. In addition to just being like horrible and brutal, it's just like she has no heart. She is a horrible person. And I do believe that she was the mastermind. I believe that this guy that she was with was just some stupid dude who just thought he was lucky to have her. But don't get me wrong, like, fuck him, fuck both of them, and no one's lucky to have her. So in September of 2015, Amber Anderson was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of her ex-husband. She ended up actually getting out on bail, which was just incredibly upsetting for Brandon's family, as I'm sure you can imagine. 2 years later, in April of 2017, her trial began, and this girl, I don't like her. I don't know if you can tell, but I don't like her. She was just like a cheeky little bitch at trial, just walking in, all smiles, asking people how their weekend was. I saw a photo of her where she's just kind of looking at the camera, and she's like, and I was like, and I'm like, I'm a non-violent person. I don't know if you get that vibe from me. I'm not about to go out and hurt somebody. I like to use my words. Like, I'm an adult. I'm not going to hurt you. However, I would very much like to hit her in the face. She just has a face that deserves to be hit. Have you ever, those people, like the lady from Speed who tries to climb off the bus and gets pulled under? A face that you just want to smack a little bit. So this is what is believed to have happened that day, is that Amber drove Brandon to Justin Hammer's house. I don't know what Brandon thought was happening or where he thought he was going, because they told Erin it was a doctor's appointment. So I don't know what was going through his head They got there and they ambushed him. Amber took the first shot. She shot him with the handgun 3 times in the head, and then Justin shot him in the face with the shotgun. They then put him into a trash bag and drug him inside into the bathroom of Justin Hammer's home, where together they dismembered him and put him into the concrete buckets, or the buckets, excuse me, with concrete. And then she left to get the kid, establish an alibi. That's when Justin called his friend Van to help with the cleanup and disposal, and the buckets were then put into the pond. Justin then took Brandon's clothes, his personal items, all the items he had used to clean up the crime scene, and he put them in like a metal barrel and he burned them. He then took apart Brandon's bike and he ended up selling it for parts, which is just so effed up to anyone who loves motorcycles. It's just a second disrespect to him that he did not deserve. But I mean, at this point they had already killed him, so why the fuck would they care, I guess? It's just so messed up, and like what they did to him so messed up, and the police told his family everything. They told his family everything that happened to him, how he was killed, what was done to him afterwards, and I cannot imagine, oh my God, see, don't do it. I cannot imagine learning that about someone you love, learning what had happened to him, because what they did to him is so fucked up, dude. And it just seems like it would be so hard to hear. And then if you have a photographic imagination, I don't, thank God, but if you do, having to like picture that is too much. And like, it seems like it weighs on his family a lot. In interviews, you can see his interviews with his mother and his brother. And it is heartbreaking to see the pain in their eyes. It's just like a lot. Now the motive, I'm sure you can guess, it was the custody battle. She was pissed that, it's believed, that she was pissed that she couldn't have Brando and that Brandon had taken Brando from her, even though she kidnapped him first. And she wanted her son back, so she killed him for it. Amber Marie Andrews was found guilty after only 5 hours of deliberation. She was given life in prison without parole for the first-degree murder charge and an additional 17 years for conspiracy to commit the felony and the desecration of Brandon's body. So now, baby Brando has lost both parents, and apparently initially he was put into DHS, and then he got put in a foster home, and this was in Oklahoma, okay? Because even though Brandon had full custody of him when he was alive, and Brandon lived in California, because Brandon died in Oklahoma and the baby was in Oklahoma with Amber at that time, he was put into the system in Oklahoma. And apparently it was a really messy custody battle. Like between the time that Brandon was killed and Amber actually got arrested, there was this messy custody battle because Brandon's family wanted to get Brando back, right? They wanted to have the one piece of Brandon that they had left. So they had to keep flying out and driving out and going to Oklahoma, which is incredibly expensive, just trying to get custody of Brando. And it's so messed up, dude. This whole thing makes my heart just ache. I'm sorry. Eventually, though, once Amber was arrested, Cindy, Brandon's mother, did end up getting custody of Brando. Cindy has said that Brando does remember and love his daddy. She said that he sees the pink in the sunset as his daddy, and he refers to Brandon as a superhero daddy, which is just like a lot for the heart. She said that she also writes down everything that Brando says about his father to remember him and recognize him and witness her son's life. Garrett said of losing his brother, and I quote, "There's always going to be a void that can't be filled." Cindy, Brandon's mother, refers to Amber as a true life monster and truly evil, which, yeah. And during her impact statements at Amber's trial, she went in on Amber. Even several times she had to be told by like the court to cool it off with her like verbal attacks. But okay, listen. I know it's a court of law. I know about a court of law. I'm a paralegal. I got attorneys. I know you have to conduct yourself in a certain way, but like, Cindy deserved to tell Amber to go fuck herself. She just did. Cindy said to Amber, and I quote, "I'll never see that smile that brightens a room before Brandon even comes in. He won't get a chance to teach Brando how to snowboard. You saw to that when you murdered him. If you did care about Brando, you wouldn't have murdered his father. You have to work for what you want, not murder for it." Occasionally Cindy would notice during her statements that Amber wasn't looking at her, like not making eye contact, and she would like stop and be like, please look at me when I'm talking to you. Amber did try to appeal her conviction, because of course she did, but the Oklahoma Court of Appeals upheld the life sentence in February of 2019. So she will be in there for the rest of her life, thankfully. And that, my friends, is the story of the horrible ambush and murder of Brandon Duran. Is that not one of the most messed up things that you have ever heard? Now, don't get me wrong. I can agree, and I can recognize that I probably have a little more of an emotional, personal investment than normally because of the fact that I've spoken to his brother Garrett. I mean, I'm a human being. Of course, that's going to happen. That's just how it goes. But even if you look at it objectively, it's so messed up. It's just such an incredibly dark story. And like, who can do something like that to another person? How can you look at a person that you loved enough to marry, the father of your child, and be like, you know what? I'm going to murder this person. And not like a spur of the moment act of passion like that. It's all wrong. That I can understand, but in actual, not even understand. That I can wrap my brain around. It's still wrong. I don't know how to say this without you guys, somebody being like, so it's okay if you heat of the moment murder somebody. No, but I can at least understand that in my brain, but to sit there and to plan it, it was so incredibly planned, and to never like stop in the commission of the planning and be like, I'm being crazy. This is obviously wrong. No, to plan it all out, then to go through with it is beyond comprehension to me. This wasn't like a random act of just rage. This was a planned cross-country ambush and murder. And he just seemed like a really nice guy. Like, he honestly did. I've watched the home video pieces of it, of the wedding and other home videos, and he just has like kind eyes. You know how you can see that in a person's eyes? He just had kindness. You could see it in him. You could see it in his face, and his brother also has it. His whole family has kind eyes. I hope I'm making sense. Like, you can see it in both his brother and his mother's eyes as well. And even just talking to Garrett, he was a super, super like sweet dude. And then his mother also, to hear her talk, seems so incredibly sweet. And on a total side note, she's like beautiful. Just, that has nothing to do with anything, but their mother is just incredibly beautiful. Anyways, I'm getting incredibly off track. The point is that Brandon just seemed like a good dude who was trying to do everything right by his family and his son, and to be a good father, and to try to reconcile his family and do something right, and she killed him for it. And the guy that helped her, what an idiot, dude. Like, I just don't get it. What was he thinking? Because here's the thing. I believe that she was the mastermind, for sure. I think that she pulled the strings, planned it, and he did it. Right? And I think she was probably using him too, let's be real. However, it takes a special kind of person to be able to be convinced to do what he did. That's not the kind of thing a normal person would do. Like, I don't care what you tell me. You're not going to convince me to ambush a person, murder them the way that they did, do what they did to his body, right? There's nothing you're going to tell me that's going to convince me to do that. So these two people are where they belong. And it's good that they're off the streets, because these are dangerous people. And that's that. But anyways, guys, that completes this video. I hope that you found it interesting and informative, and it gave you all the information you could want when looking into this case. And of course, I hope you enjoyed watching it. I want you to enjoy what I'm putting out into the world. That's why I'm putting it out into the world. And as always, and very clearly, thank you for like hanging out and remembering Brandon and his family with me today, because what happened to him is just so messed up. It's so horrific. And it was so brutal and so pointless. All he wanted to do was to like be with the person he loved and have a good family and do something right by his son and just be like a good stand-up dude. And this bitch, let's call it what it is. I'm sorry. She's a bitch. She killed him for it. She stole his life and then stole him from all the people who loved him and cared about him. And that is horrible. I don't know what else to say. It's just really fucking sad. Please, of course, let me know down below of any cases you would like to see me cover, because as you know, I got a very long list of cases that I want to cover, but every time you leave a suggestion, I add it to my list with your little name to give you a shout out, because I'm very interested in the cases that you're interested in, because I know you're filled with good taste and good ideas. Otherwise, you would not be here. Speaking of which, my friend Mike is actually the one who brought this case to my attention. I don't think he brought it to my attention for me to do a video on, but on the off chance that he watches this, which I seriously doubt, thank you, Cambro, for your contribution to the channel. Of course, please make sure to join the Brat Pack if you haven't already by subscribing and ringing that bell. And if you want to follow me more consistently on the day-to-day, Instagram and Twitter is where I'm most active. Instagram stories is where it's at for polls, sneak peeks. If I go on live, I give sneak peeks all the time to upcoming videos. And if you want to hang out, I also have a Facebook page and a Facebook group. I will link everything down below. The Facebook page is BRATTERSTEIN. The group is Morbid Makeup True Crime. So if you'd like to follow those, stay connected. I love talking to you guys. I'm always responding to everyone's everything because you're my friends. I don't know. Anyways, with all of that said, thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. I know I might have been awkward in this one. I felt a weird pressure knowing a family member was going to be watching. I always know that that option is there, but to know it made me highly anxious. So thank you for bearing with me. But anyways, this is tight. You are tight. Please be a better person than you were yesterday. Definitely be better than Amber Andrews and Justin Hammer. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.